The moment Penn State fans have been waiting for over 50 days, it is officially here. And if you're watching this video, it's not just sort of reported. It's not just agreed in principle working towards. Like, if you're watching this video, it is official with a big O. Matt Campbell is the next head coach for the Nittany Lions. Nate Bauer, who's been covering it this whole time for BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, is here to discuss it in the way that only he can. Following this, just excellent job as always by Nate. I'm going to give you your flowers here at the front. Be nice to you now, and then we're going to get into like poking at all the things and having all of the goodness spill out of all the information people are curious about. So thank you for your time, and I know this has been a long process, but I do want to start with, everyone else was talking about this as far as like it's a done deal. You've probably watched other videos, other YouTube channels talking about this. We're here later because, and Nate, can you fill in the blanks of like why that is for everybody?
Yeah, because he didn't sign. He didn't sign anything. He didn't return a DocuSign. Because this has moved quickly, right? I think that you can't talk about this without talking about Kalani Sitake, which is to say Penn State had an agreement with him that he would be their next head coach. They felt really good about that. To the point of him being able to get out of it. No, like he could leave that deal. And he did leave that deal, but the work up to him being Penn State's head coach, Sitake specifically, was a weeks-long thing, right? It was a weeks-long effort of interview and returning to the interview and then setting all the parameters, all the things that you do when you're making a contract. What's the money for him going to be? What's the money for the staff pool going to be? What is the money, even if it's not in the contract, what's the money for NIL going to look like? All of those things are hammered out, and it's back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And that happened over at least a week plus for Sitake.
Which is why on Tuesday on our live show, we discussed it in the way that we did, and the way that it, as you have pointed out, it's not over till it's over, but here is, kind of the general things you were talking about. And so when that then fell through, here we are now making sure that it didn't fall through before we go through with having this conversation. Is that fair to kind of characterize, like, I guess, the perspective of what we learned from Tuesday onward?
Yeah, that was the case anyway, right? That's just
right.
Look, all the national folks that report on this don't report on it if they don't feel, well, one, everybody's chomping at the bit, right? Everybody's like rabid about this story. And like, I get it. It's a national story. Everybody wants to be, and I think even speaking journalistically, everybody's just ready for this to be over. I'm sure I can speak for you at least, and myself in saying like enough. But at the same time, you can say, like Matt Campbell can say, yeah, I want to be Penn State's head coach. I'm ready to be Penn State's head coach. I agree to all of these things, and then want to wait until all of the formalities are done and something is in writing and they're right. Like by the time that you write the story that says pending Board of Trustees approval, which is also necessary for this to get over the finish line. Put it this way. Over all the years of covering James Franklin and some of his paranoia and the things that he said on the backside of Jim Knowles getting hired of, hey, like this is being reported as done when it's not done. Probably had a point. Was saying some stuff that probably had a point, because you do see these things deteriorate sometimes. And I think that's pretty much what happened with Sitake the other day.
So that leads us to the last couple of days, which I think before we get into Matt Campbell, the timeline leading up to this decision is also important, that it wasn't immediately a pivot to Matt Campbell. So what can you tell us about between that which you just described and now?
So that deal fell apart on Tuesday afternoon. And at that point, you know, it's like a bomb went off, right? You got to, like, which way is up? You got to figure all that stuff out. Because they were very much intending on him being the next head coach at Penn State. Like they had gone through this months-long process to whittle down candidates to find a guy that they loved, and they did. They loved him. But after that happens, you can pivot and make an immediate decision because the timeline is what it is. And at this point, there's national pressure on this. It's a pressure cooker. People are looking at it. The microscope is there. And it is what happened with Penn State. Calm down, right? Okay, who are people who have been explored previously? Who are people who deserve circling back on, right? And I think that process played itself out on Wednesday. But as part of that process, as those things went through, the day, they got to a point where it was like, okay, there are some prior options that really aren't options. And now there are some other guys that deserve their attention. And one of those guys was Matt Campbell. And they started to kind of focus on that on Wednesday.
So focusing on Wednesday, now obviously he's signed. I just want to get your opinion, or you can throw it back to me if you want. Like what is this? How does this work for Penn State? Like what is the view of Matt Campbell as the Nittany Lions head coach? Yeah,
you tell me. I mean, well, look, I do want to say one thing before you get going, because I do think you're going to have valuable insight here. If part of the concept over the last 2 months has been a coach who can maximize, right, in ways that maybe James Franklin was not able to, right? This contrast of squeezing the most juice out of the product that you have, then Matt Campbell is like maybe one of the most respected and well-known figures in college football for doing that. It is hard to recruit to Iowa State, and they don't recruit nationally relevant classes.
They don't recruit even, I would say, super regionally. It's not even that they don't recruit the whole Midwest. It's not that they don't recruit nationally. It's, digging into it, it has been like a very fascinating experience to see. I think two things here when it comes to what Matt Campbell has done. First is that what you just said of maximizing the resources available, which from my understanding is functionally nothing from an NIL perspective, that there is not a collective. There is not really a organization or a structure to get money to Iowa State for player retention or acquisition. And then from the recruiting aspect, I was talking to some of the people around the program, and this is a well-known thing at Iowa State. They have a 6-hour radius rule. 6 hours around Iowa State is where they're going to target, and that's going to be their recruiting base. So just put a pin and some string on a map, and that's their recruiting base. And I asked, well, how far away is Texas? Texas being somewhat regional, like, there's some areas, and the response was, it's not really worth the time and money to go into a place like Florida or Texas, because if, adversity strikes or they get homesick, they feel that those guys are going to transfer away from Iowa State. So when you look at like the average recruiting ranking, or the fact that he had a 4-8 season at Iowa State, just know he's recruiting as if trains are the main form of transportation in America. Like, you read the stories of the history of Penn State, and they would like travel by train to Pittsburgh, and that was like a big bowl trip or whatever. Like, we're talking in similarities here in order of magnitude about the Iowa State recruiting situation. That was at least described to me by people who cover the program. So that's what he's been working with. Now, that says two things. One, excellent job at maximizing what he has. And two, I think generally the lack of elite competition in the Big 12. I think it does speak a little bit to the Big 12 and some of the problems that there have been of translating things from that conference to the Big 10 or to the SEC. Now, that's not to say some of those ideas and concepts on the football side of things of maximizing talent and innovation have not taken the whole football country in vogue. Jim Knowles' defense is built off of similar ideas to what Matt Campbell did at Iowa State with his defensive coordinator. So, there is a little bit of those two things when you talk about the resources and the production at Iowa State. But to me, maximizing talent and squeezing the juice out of everything, absolutely a home run hire in that particular perspective. In football and in finance, having a strong game plan makes all the difference. AJ Freedom Financial helps individuals build personalized financial strategies that align with their goals, timelines, and risk tolerance. From investment guidance and retirement planning to 401k rollovers, HSA assistance, and legacy and wealth strategies, AJ Freedom Financial offers thoughtful, one-on-one support backed by industry experience and a commitment to transparency. Whether you're starting to invest, planning for retirement, or you simply want a second look at your financial approach, AJ Freedom Financial is here to help you make informed, confident decisions. Schedule a no-obligation consultation today at www.ajffi.com. Call 866-383-6899 or email info@ajffi.com. Again, that's ajffi.com. Call 866-383-6899 or email info@ajffi.com. AJ Freedom Financial, helping Nittany Lions fans plan for what's next. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Gradient Securities, LLC. Arden Hills, Minnesota, 866-991-1539. Member FINRA, SIPC. Gradient Securities, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor, offers investment advisory services under the DBA of Gradient Wealth Management. Gradient Securities, LLC, and its advisors do not render tax, legal, or accounting services. Insurance products and services offered through AJ Freedom Financial. AJ Freedom Financial and Freedom Financial Insurance, LLC, are not affiliated with Gradient Securities, LLC.
Yeah, I really think that the part of this is this idea of what the new model is going to look like in college football.
Yes.
And allowing your head coach to not wear necessarily all of the hats and very bluntly, getting a guy in that seat that can coach football, that just is a football guy, which is not something that you would necessarily say about James Franklin. And look, I think that James's, his record speaks for itself. I think that there's a lot of things that he did for Penn State and that the successes that he had at Penn State that will hold up. They hold water. But also in terms of reputationally, can you just prepare for games and win games, including games against teams that have more players that are better at playing football than the team that you have? Matt Campbell's kind of it. Matt Campbell is a very shining example of doing that. So pair him with a budget, and some Northeast familiarity. He's from Ohio and a GM who knows what he's doing. And, there's a potential to be in business.
Yeah, I think that's important here, and I think that's a conversation we can have for another day, but just generally the GM conversation is the next step to this, and would you imagine there's going to be, how do you view that particular role with Matt Campbell at Penn State? Because we can talk about recruiting, and we talk about NIL, which I also investigated over there, as we talked about, but are you saying that more of this is now the football coach being the football coach, and those are the responsibilities at Penn State for him? Even though I know recruiting in college is going to still rely on the head coach and his charisma and his ability to, attract football people to a football place.
Yeah, it's important. The head coach is still going to direct who you want. It's about how you spend the money, right? It's about how you distribute the funds that you have and making sure that you're not overpaying for underproducing players. That's the bulk of it. And that's the bulk of the concern. I mean, for anybody who listened to the leaked Pat Kraft audio, right, this massive scandal, I mean, not really. The stuff that he was saying was hey, there were too many dollars spent of a finite pot, right? It's not infinite. Hey, this is how much money Penn State has to work with. And they're always trying to make it more, but this is how much money there is. you can't really afford to spend X amount of dollars, whatever that is, hundreds of thousands of dollars on players who aren't going to get you where you need to be on the field. You can't pay that for leadership.
Yeah. And I think that's from the time we've talked about this and Pat Kraft's kind of opening statements and the reasoning behind firing James Franklin, like I think that is a valid reason. I have been said like, okay, fair enough. Like that's going to be, a reason I can get behind in terms of the reasoning behind this particular change. From the football side, if I can give it to that for just 1 second. This is an offensive-minded guy, from what I can tell. Specifically played defense in college, offensive line coach at one point in his career at Bowling Green, and I think has an eye for detail. If there's one thing, so what I did, Nate, is I went to all of their big games, and I specifically looked at like games where they lost or they got blown out. And, doing a quick study, because we haven't had infinite time, it's only a couple of days after getting word of this, even in those kind of like big game blowouts, or like, is he going to have the same problems as James Franklin? Because you've seen all the graphics on social media of like, this isn't an upgrade. The way his players played in those games, execute really well, get blown out by players that are more talented. And you can control some of those things of execution, clarity of your plan, how quickly and how efficiently you play on the football field. And the thing that no matter what year I turned on, and I tried to go through a couple of years because he's been there at Iowa State for a while, the players always seemed to know what they were doing. And there was a clarity and a unity on the offensive side. Offensive linemen got to their blocks efficiently. Quarterbacks read the field. They were quick with their decisions. Sometimes they made bad decisions, but it looked like they could read the field. So I think from an offensive standpoint, maximizing talent is a thing he can do. Recruiting offensive linemen is going to change everything for him, because it was a group that, Nate, when you're in these situations, the number one group you can't find are the aliens up front. You can find some good receivers. You can find a good slot receiver. You can find a good running back. Breece Hall played at Iowa State. What you cannot find usually, especially in the Midwest, especially in anywhere that isn't actually the University of Iowa, is offensive linemen. Like they just cannot seem to find those guys in that particular region. And so you have to build around that. And I think that they have done a very good job of that. So having good football players up front will be a major benefit for him on that side of the ball. The question I have, and this has been kind of bandied about in the conversations over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Good time to remind you can join us. I don't know. I'm just going to put this up here because I don't have anything else ready to go. But you can subscribe as the coaching search continues as we discuss how he's going to build out his staff. You can join us for $1 and go to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Get on these conversations. The defensive side of the ball, I think, to me, is the interesting one, where you look at the 3-3-5, which he's run there for a very long time. That will, I personally believe that's not going to play in the Big Ten. So I think he's going to have to make some decisions, and staffing decisions will be very revealing early on of the plan here, because Jim Knowles does fit in terms of the overall philosophy. He can run something. He runs something incredibly similar to what Matt Campbell has run at Iowa State. And the question becomes, like, what are the details there within? But I think generally he will have to stick to the Penn State DNA on defense in order to make this transition effective, especially in year one, like when he's trying to take over a team and whatever pieces are left around. So to me, like, offense, A+, I think they're going to elevate the talent and give the quarterback, by the way, like, all what this leads to is elevating quarterback play. Offensive line knows their assignment. Receivers know their assignment. Quarterback has clarity and confidence to throw the ball into windows that I don't think we've seen consistently from Penn State quarterbacks over the year. And then it becomes the effectiveness of their talent in those situations. What I'm saying is, like, they might get quarterback development from Matt Campbell. And I think that's a huge thing for Penn State football, to raise the opportunity to punch above their weight, which is what we're talking about here. Like, upgrade, like, elevating Penn State to where they could beat some of these teams that maybe have more resources or more talent. So what's the next step here, Nate, in this process for, I guess, what we should be covering and looking out for?
Yeah, I mean, the board of trustees has to approve this, which they will. But yeah, certainly there are steps to be taken. A press conference, right? All of that stuff. Like, I mean, it is all the stuff that we've done to find out who Penn State was going to hire. Has been a ride. I don't know if I could call it fun, but it's been something. And now it becomes okay. Now they got to build out a staff. They got to all the stuff of building a program. I mean, the transfer portal starts in less than a month. Who are the players that are coming with him? Who are the players that are leaving Penn State? All that stuff has to sort itself out, and it'll be interesting to see.
So we appreciate everyone who relies on us and our coverage for hanging out with us and checking us out here on this video, and for being patient with us, trying to make sure we dot our I's and cross our T's, or dot our T's and cross our I's, as I like to say, to make sure all this is in, as Matt Campbell is the next head coach at Penn State. I'm interested to see how that staffing is going to work out. I think the recruiting, I guess the last thing I want to say is, like, there are these questions, right, about recruiting and fit in the modern era as a guy who has been at a very old school program of development. And a lot of the DNA that makes him a good fit at Penn State is what he was doing at Iowa State. You've kind of pointed this out, but I just want to say this here of, like, good football coaches attract talent. And I think he's proven that he's a guy that can recruit to a certain level and identify talent. That's the other thing I think is really important in this conversation. 15 guys going to the NFL, and some guys that have been superstars. Brock Purdy, one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL. Identifying and developing talent has been something they've done at Iowa State. So porting all of that to Penn State, what you have to do is obviously keep and then develop relationships, but that is a thing you can do. I think that there's, and trust me, like, I'm not an expert in this, but Nate, developing relationships is just talking to people and being a human being, right? Like, that is a thing that's achievable. Is this an insurmountable mountain of, like, getting to know the Mechanicsburg head coach or Cumberland Valley or going into the DMV and getting to know Malvern Prep and Bishop McDevitt and things like, I don't want to keep going because I'll show my ignorance here in a second. But I just wanted to, I just think it's important to say, like, those things can be taught by somebody who has been doing this for a long time anyway. So I think that there's a positive sign of what this can be for Penn State football. But of course, like, we'll find out together. As always, last thoughts for you, and then I'll get us out of here. I know I went long-winded on what felt like my final thoughts, but anything else that you think?
I thought we were just going to say that he got hired. What? Yeah. No, it's clearly an important day for Penn State football. It is not the process or not the I mean, that's kind of the funny thing is it might be exactly the result that everybody anticipated. It's just that the route that it took to get there for Penn State was not really what anybody expected. You end up with a guy who has a tremendous amount of respect in the coaching industry, who seems like he's got a lot of natural fit qualities that will apply at Penn State. And it'll be interesting to see how people rally around him and what type of program he can build for Penn State.
We'll see how all of this shakes out, of course, over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. If you're watching the video, please like the video, subscribe here to the YouTube channel, and we will be back. I'm going to try and do some more stuff this weekend, give you some more insight into Matt Campbell, because I know this is going to be like the thing for the next forever, maybe, the next 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 2 months, a year of getting to know Matt Campbell. Of course, breakdowns of film and all that stuff over on the website. For Nate Bauer, I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Thank you for being here. We'll talk to you next time when there's more information from Blue White.